what comes out is, but how are you going to earn a living? And there it was, the starving artist. You just starve from art. And I said, I want you to look at the world. I said, everything is art. Everything needs art. Commercials are art. Clothes are art. Jewelry's art. What's not art? I said, I have to get cushions for my furniture in the summer, and they're artistic. I said, art is everywhere. I said, the only thing that stops you, the only thing, is your expectations of what you think you should have, what you think you should earn, and what you think you're entitled to. Hi, everybody. Time for another archetype. You know, I am really enjoying these because they give me license to just carry on, and that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to do the starving artist. I was going to do another one because there's so many I want to do. I want to get into the bully, the detective, the wounded child, the healer, but I decided to do the starving artist today because I went grocery shopping. And the gentleman that was checking me out, he just oozed the starving artist archetype. And so I said to him, so you're an artist, huh? And he looked and he said, yes. And he didn't even say, how do you know that? And I said, are you going to follow that career? Are you going to do something about it? Why aren't you going to do something about it? And I, Jesus, sometimes I can't stop myself. But there are moments when you just have to sprinkle fairy dust on someone. You just have to do it. I have to do it. I just have to do it. And this is where, when those kinds of impressions start rolling into me, I just have to. So I said, you have to respond. You have to. I said, you're so artistic. Look at your whole childhood. You were doodling and noodling and da-da-da. And he never even said, how'd you know that? He said, yeah, and so then, of course, what comes out is, but how are you going to earn a living? And there it was, the starving artist. You just starve from art. And I said, I want you to look at the world. I said, everything is art. Everything needs art. Commercials are art. Clothes are art. Jewelry's art. What's not art? I said, I have to get cushions for my furniture in the summer, and they're artistic. I said, art is everywhere. I said, the only thing that stops you, the only thing, is your expectations of what you think you should have, what you think you should earn, and what you think you're entitled to. Expectations and entitlement, they're killers. And he looked, and he kind of looked back. I said, I mean it. I said, if you have those two things in your head, you'll never jump into your art. Just do your art. And then grab my groceries. But then he came and he said, thank you. Thank you. I don't know if you'll ever pay any attention to it, but you're going to pay attention to it. And it reminded me on my way home. I was reminded, this may sound like I'm going on a tangent, which I am, but that's what I get to do because this is my thing. Years ago, after graduate school, I was going to pursue a doctorate in California, and I had a summer to kill. And I had to work, and a friend of mine got me a job as a secretary to a renowned scientist at Northwestern University, a wonderful, wonderful man. He was chairman of the Department of Pharmacology at Northwestern. And so he was the only one who knew that I had just finished a master's degree and was going on for a doctorate, and that my job was just for the summer. And as it turned out, he only had enough money on his grant to have a private secretary for the summer. And so that was that. And, I am not good at being a secretary. I discovered that. But he and I became the dearest of friends. And I learned so much. As it turned out, I ended up there 2.5 years. But here's the point of this, that, during times like that, it's very easy to kind of fall off the rails in your life and think, what am I doing here? Where's my career? Da 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 da. But that's not what I did. I found one of the most fascinating lessons of my life. And it had to do with entitlement and expectations. Because I was surrounded by very accomplished people, all of whom had doctorates, all of whom were scientists, all of whom were brilliant, brilliant people. And the expectations on these people to produce was incredible, whereas I had none whatsoever. And as it turned out, paradoxically, that positioned me to be the most empowered person in the department, which, as you'll see, I took full advantage of. Now, the first thing that I noticed was the attitudes that these scientists had about we in the secretarial pool, and how condescending they were, and their expectations of us, which were low and judgmental and unbelievable. And I remember one day walking in, and I knew that during the first summer, the summer I was there, when I thought I would be gone by September, I walked in, and this one guy comes out, and he just throws this manuscript in my face, and he says, "I need this typed by noon." He didn't even say good morning. He said nothing. He just said, "I need this typed by noon." And I looked at my watch, and I said, "Well, that gives you 3 hours." And I threw it back in his face, and I kept going. And he comes rushing into the office after that. And he says, "I'm going to tell Dr. Narahashi about this." That was the chairman of the department. So I looked at him, I grabbed the calendar, and I said, "Okay, what time do you want to see him?" And I said, "And he's going to be so impressed that you're going to go in there and say, 'Your secretary said.'" And then it was war between us. Believe you me, we never settled that. But his pride was the first thing I noticed, and how unbelievable it was. Now, the other secretaries in there were looking at me like, "Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Pfft," right? There was another secretary who would walk in there, and she wouldn't talk to me because I belonged to Dr. Narahashi. And she would look to the other two, and she never even acknowledged them. She'd walk in and she'd say, "I need this, I need that, I need this," and walk out. These were wonderful girls, and they felt this. And I just took note of all this behavior, and what entitlement does, and what expectations. Finally, she crossed a line with one of them, and that person was afraid to say something, but I didn't care. So I called this scientist up, and I said, "Dr. Da-da-da," I said, "would you have lunch with me?" And of course, I am a lowly secretary. She didn't say anything. And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I'd just like to have lunch with you." So we go to lunch at the Water Tower in Chicago. And we're sitting there, and she's looking at me as if I had a duck on my head. And I said, "Here's why I want to have lunch with you. You come in, and you have this attitude toward the other girls in my office. And then when you walk out, I have to put them back together again. I have to build their self-esteem. I have to tell them that they're okay after what you do. Your psychic assault on them." And I said, "So here's what I think. I think something's going on with you. So you can either tell me what that is. You could tell me it's none of my business, but something is going on with you. Or you can either tell me to bugger off." I said, "But I'm going to ask you not to do that again." And I am telling you, her jaw dropped. Her jaw dropped. And she opened up. And believe it or not, we became friends. I took a big risk. But to be honest with you, I had this whole sense of what does it matter? I mean, if I lost this job, I'll get another one. I just need a job for a few weeks and it doesn't matter. I learned what freedom was, what it was to not be burdened with the need with expectations or any sense of entitlement, because I was entitled to nothing, nor was anything expected of me. I mean, other than showing up, right? Other than showing up. And I watched what the burden of expectations and entitlement did to other people who should have felt far more secure in who they were. But in fact, it worked against them because it made them competitive and jealous and cutthroat and incapable of supporting each other in ways that would have enhanced each other's career. And it gave starving a meaning to me. The starving artist, the starving scientist, the starving creative person, the watching someone who feared the creative genius of a colleague. I just saw the movie Emily, and it's the story of the Bronte sisters, really emphasizing Emily. And you see the competitiveness between Emily Bronte, who wrote Wuthering Heights, and Charlotte, who wrote the brilliant Jane Eyre, which is actually one of my favorite books in my whole life. This burden of expectations and entitlement is really are two dark threads that are more harmful to any archetypal pattern, to be honest, any archetypal pattern, that I can even emphasize to you. But when it comes to the artistic aspect of the human being, I think that everybody has the impulse to create. We are biologically designed to give birth, to give life, to create. And maybe not everybody wants to give birth to a child to have biological acts of creation, but we want to create. And then there are those who actually have the artist archetype, who actually want to produce and give birth to to acts of creation, and in all their many forms. But there are so many forms of creativity that just flow through people, even the way you think. And you think, I've got to boost my thinking process to a more creative level. I've run out of steam. And to that, I would tell you that when you kind of level off and realize this isn't going anywhere, then I always tell people, grab a dictionary, fill yourself with new words, fill yourself, just read page after page of the dictionary and pour language into you. Vocabulary is your greatest asset. Start using words to examine, to work through your challenges. Use different vocabulary. Become creative in how you think. Instead of saying, I've got a problem, call it a curiosity and see how I've got a curiosity, I've got to work something through. It's a fascination. It's not a problem. Take that word out and put something else in. And then stop using certain words that are really handicaps and obstacles to you. Like, stop saying you're afraid of something. Take fear-based language out of your vocabulary. And that is like an exorcism. That's going to take some doing. That you stop telling yourself you're afraid to do something. That you just, fears are like, one of the teachings of Teresa of Avila that I loved the most, when I came upon it, I felt as if a light bulb had been given to me in the true sense of what it means to become illuminated by something. When she said that fears were like reptiles that get into your head, and reptiles see better at night, and they were just reptiles, and you had to get them out. And I realized, and that was a metaphor that just worked for me. And I thought, that's exactly what they are. And I loathe reptiles. I loathe them. I can't stand those kinds of creatures, insects, reptiles. They just, ugh. And so that repugnant image actually worked for me. And from that point on, when I dealt with a fear, and when I deal with a fear inside of me, I reduce it to this idea that I've been invaded by a reptile, and it needs to come out. And that's all there's to it. And in that same idea, the idea that following your creative nature might result in you starving is a reptile. That's just a reptile. And it's something that you cannot afford to follow. And if you have expectations in your head of, like for example, that your creativity should result in lots of success and lots of fame and lots of money, that's a reptile. That's not an asset. It's a liability. Your creativity is your creativity. You should follow it as this primary instinct from your soul, without this idea that it is attached to a reward. You know, I adore mystical wisdom. And in all the traditions, there is this thread, like the birth in the manger. This idea that greatness, that true power is born humbly. It's born humbly for a reason. And one of the reasons is that you are prevented from generating what you think should happen to you, how you think your life path should unfold, how you want it to unfold, because you do not know what is in your own best interests. You really do not know. And how often I've said to my students, if you chart the best things that have ever happened to you, there's a real good chance that you'll realize you did not plan them. You did not see them coming. They surprised you. They unfolded. They just happened. For example, meeting the love of your life. You may have wanted that, but how it happened is more likely a surprise. When it happened, how it happened. The wonderful things that happen to us are really surprises. They are scheduled, but not by us. And the catastrophes that happen always have our fingerprints on them. Or I shouldn't say always, but lots of them do. Because we get in our own way. Because we think this is the way something should happen. So we become manipulative, and we become temperamental, and we get in our own way because we so fear that what we want isn't going to happen. And so we become controlling, and we become this and this and that. And when I look at, I think of this one scientist again, who I remember him so well because he presented himself as being such a, one of those really kind of metro male kind of characters, and he had a little sports car, and he and he was the most unaccomplished one there, tragically. And he absolutely could not produce the papers that were required for the movement from up the ladder of professorhood. And his insecurity, he compensated with his insecurity with, his clothing and his cool haircuts and his little sports car, but it was no compensation for the fact that he wasn't really producing anything of great value in his laboratory. I've often thought about him, and I wondered where he is today. I have no idea, but the expectations, I think that he had extraordinary expectations of himself in graduate school and in his younger years that were in fact his greatest obstacles. Ideas of what he could be without actually knowing the language and the pace of his own creativity. If you look at nature, nature always starts out with seeds. It never produces a big, huge tree just like that. In and I look at my own life, and I think I followed a career path. I was following the career path as a journalist, which is something where I did have expectations. I wanted to work at the Chicago Tribune. I loved that building. I thought downtown, it's so cool, and the Tribune, and so I had expectations, and I envisioned that. And of course, at this point, some of you will say, shouldn't you envision something? And yeah, you need that kind of thing to get through school, to get through your graduate work, to motivate you. But somehow I think woven into all of our plans, because this happens to everybody, is that they don't always unfold as there has to be kind of a dance with our plans, with our choices. The stream of higher guidance works its way in. And that's where our inner guidance, our inner intelligence, has to work with our creative intelligence that says, well, if this is the door that is open to me, then I'm going to go and make the best of it and assume that it has to do with the greater plan of my life, instead of fighting it if this is the river that opens. When my writing career, which was paltry at best in Chicago, just stopped. It just stopped. It just came to a halt. The only door that was open to me at all were these two friends who said, why don't you come to New Hampshire and join us? We want to start a publishing company. It was the last thing I wanted to do. I never pictured myself living in New Hampshire, in a town of 800 people on this back-end farm. Never. I mean, any more than I ever pictured myself swimming the English Channel. I mean, I cannot tell you but how perfect. Because I was given something that was such a blank page that I had no expectations, no sense of entitlement, nothing. It was a blank page, and I'm telling you, the blank page is the greatest gift in the world, because you don't trip yourself up. You're literally a new seedling, and if you find yourself on a blank page, that's when you think, all right, this is good. This is good. This is stopping me from a path of destruction that would come from my fears, my entitlement, or my expectations. So now all I need to work on, all I can do, is stay in the present moment and work with what I've got. And what a blessing that is. And to that, I would say to the starving artist, turn to your art. Whatever it is however it is you feel your art best expresses itself, just do that. Just do that. And don't then say, well, who's going to like this? And where can I sell it? Just work on your art and generate that energetic atmosphere around you. Work on your art and think of yourself as an artist. See yourself as an artist. And if you have to work as a secretary to pay the bills, then do it. Then do it. Big deal. If you have to do that. But do not not do your art. And don't tell yourself that, I don't envision, well, I need to have a gallery, or it has to be famous before you even bring it out there. Don't say, who's going to like it? Who cares? If you like it, it starts with that. If you like it, it's good enough. If you begin with that, don't starve your own creativity. Don't ever do that. And what you want to starve are your expectations. And what you want to do is absolutely smack down your sense of entitlement. One of the things Teresa of Avila always told her nuns was, you're not entitled to anything. Get that out of your head. How do you think this world is designed? Around your entitlements? Because it's not. Nothing. But remind yourself of all the wonderful things that have happened to you that you didn't see coming. And those are blessings that the universe just provides along the way. And this is why I will add that one of the greatest things you can do is the practice of humility. Just humble up. Just humble up and say, I'll do what I have to do. But the most important is to follow those creative instincts that are within you all the time, and not listen to the language of reptiles that might hold, and often do, hold you back. So that's the starving artist, kind of in a big, huge way. But thank you.